I was like, I think this album is probably their worst work and nearly unlistenable. And I got like 500 to like 1,000 comments, like unique, like 500 to 1,000 different people like commenting like genuinely mad at me. Like, what is going on, my mates? Hope everyone's doing very well today. So I changed my mind on something, and that is the Story So Far's self-titled album. And I've been a long time not fan of this album, and that has changed a little bit. A lot has changed, a lot hasn't, and that's what we're going to be talking about today in this video, because you know, I want to hold myself accountable and communicate with the mates on the channel. You know, if I change my mind on something, I want to be real about it. Even if I have to eat my words a little bit, I want to be honest and transparent with the way that I feel about music. So here's what hasn't changed, right? I still do believe that this album, their self-titled album, is the weakest in their discography of the 4 albums that they have put out. When this album came out, I think I was ready for the change of pace that happened on Proper Dose, but I didn't get it. And as a selfish fan, I was like, what is this? I don't like this. I feel like I was a little bit too hard on it. You know, like when parents have a child, the firstborn child, it's always the hardest, and then by the time they have like the 4th kid, they're like, I don't even know, she's just out, you know, drinking with her friends. And I'm like, dude, she's 13. And they're like, I don't know. But I kind of realized I was a little bit too hard on this album, because I think when it came out, I was like, okay, like, dude, I get it, like Parker's mad, he's the color blue, and I don't know, dude, I think I was just like a little bit too hard on it, a little mad about it. And then when Proper Dose came out, my distaste for this album just grew bigger and bigger, because Proper Dose, like I said, was that change of pace that I'd been wanting, kind of that slight experimentation with the sound. Parker wasn't as angry. In fact, he's the exact opposite, which was also a great change of pace. But based on that, I was like, wow, now I really don't like this album. And that's the thing, you know, as I've thought about it more, listened to it more, because the last video, my disappointing pop punk album, like whatever, you know, I had a lot of people saying, Nate, like what the F, dude? And this has been the case for a while. As I think more and more about this album, in my mind, I kind of start to go to the place of, if this album was put out by another band, would I like it? And I think the answer is an astounding yes. If it wasn't put out by the Story So Far, especially at the time that I heard it, I think I would have been like, wow, this is some really good angry pop punk music. But I think because it was by the Story So Far and they'd already put out Under Soil and Dirt, What You Don't See, I was like, oh man, this is just the same thing. And you know, like it kind of is, you know, not saying that's like a fault to the album, but I think the biggest thing that I kind of want to go back to again is it didn't change at all like it did on Proper Dose, like I was kind of ready for. I think that was a big reason why I didn't like it. But at the same time, like I said, if it was put out by a different band at the same time, I probably would have been like, oh, this is really good. So I'm like, is it really fair to dislike it this much? And one of the main catalysts for me reevaluating the way that I feel about this album is just the way that people react when I say that I don't like it, whether it be an Instagram post or in a YouTube video like the disappointing pop punk albums video. I've realized that I'm like pretty much the only one that really didn't like this album. And a lot of the time with that stuff, I'm just like, okay, you know, like this is my opinion, like whatever. But with this, I seem to be the only person that really didn't like this album. So I was like, okay, I need to go back and reevaluate, really deeply listen to this and see how I feel. And so here we are today. Like, people really love this album, because I remember, okay, here's a quick story, right? I went up to San Francisco a while ago to visit my girlfriend. At the time, it was a really good trip and whatever, but I remember like right before I got there, like 30 minutes before like the bus dropped me off at the station, or basically on the side of the street, I made a post about the Story So Far's self-titled album. I thought a lot of people would be in agreement with me. I posted it, you know, that just a picture of their self-titled album. I was like, I think this album is probably their worst work and nearly unlistenable. And I got like 500 to like 1,000 comments, like unique, like 500 to 1,000 different people like commenting like genuinely mad at me, like like defaming my character, like saying like, Nate, you're just doing this to like stir up the mud, or like whatever they say. And I'm like, dude, no, like I really don't like this album. And that was kind of the first time where I was like, dang, like I'm kind of a minority on this. Just I want to talk about what I like and don't like from this album. So we're going to start out with the negatives first, and just on a track by track basis, there are 2 tracks that I particularly just don't enjoy. Don't think it's their best work. Not saying they're like absolutely horrible, because in comparison listen to a lot of bands that play pop punk, these tracks are still miles better. Like, pretty much anything the Story so far puts out is miles better than the average pop punk band. Like, let's be real, they're just an objectively solid band. But the two tracks on this album that I particularly do not care for at all would be Distaste. I really just didn't like the flow of this song. The guitar work just felt boring to me in Parker's voice. It just wasn't very dynamic. It just went dun 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 dun. I don't know, I can't really do it. I just thought this track was particularly forgettable. I just have a general dislike for this song. The second track on this album that I find particularly not good is the song Phantom on the later half of the album. It's acoustic, it's a little bit slower. I think they were trying to go for like that clairvoyant navy blue type of vibe, and it just didn't work very well. It just felt super boring. It's like da na 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 na, and it was such a weird change of pace in the album. Like, I don't really feel like it added anything to the album or like helped further the songs or anything like that. It was just really kind of randomly placed in there, and I feel like it just wasn't the best written song. And it's like, dude, like, we get it, like, you're blue, you know what I mean? And then that kind of leads me into the next criticism that I have with this album is the overuse of the feeling dark blue, navy blue thing. I just feel like it's a bit overdone, kind of like the Real Friends thing, like sleepy eyes, bony knees. It's like, okay, you know, it's like, we get it. It's very similar to the way that I say mate all the time. It's pretty much the same thing. It just felt kind of unnecessary, and the more that I heard it, the more empty it felt. And then my last criticism toward this album would just be the lack of variety within the album. Parker's voice, it just doesn't change a whole lot. He has like 2 or 3 styles of singing that are just like, you know, like just the typical Parker Cannon type of vibe. His voice is just not very dynamic in this album, but in Proper Dose, it's extremely dynamic. There's so much variety on that album, and that's why I love Proper Dose so much. But this album is nothing of the sort. And overall, it's not the worst thing, but it would have been so much better had there been just a little bit more variety. And I know you're thinking, Nate, they tried to do that with Phantom. And I'm like, yeah, like one track in like the middle end of the album that just didn't make sense at all. With Proper Dose, they were like kind of just all sprinkled in there, and it was just beautiful. However, there are many positive things that this album has going for it, such as how catchy some of these songs are. Solo is by far one of the best songs that they have ever written. It's got one of the best groovy feels to it, one of the catchiest songs on the album for sure. The chorus of Nerve will just get stuck in your head forever. He's like, it's all in my head. I also believe the song Mock is one of the better songs that they've ever written. It's just like pretty heavy, Parker's yelling, and it just really works in this song. Stupid catchy. And then of course we have Heavy Gloom, which would be a contender for one of the catchiest tracks on the album as well. You know, I know all your flaws, most of your fears, you know, like I won't sing it, but you know how good it is. I'm also a really big fan of the way that this album opens with the song Smile. It's really heavy, it's really catchy. I like the part where he says, are you blocking out the things that have to do with me? That's just another part in this album that'll get stuck in your head hella, and I don't know, man. And I think the reason why I entertained even changing my mind in the first place is just how many of these songs will get stuck in your head. And I'm like, how can I say this is just like completely horrible if like all of these songs are like getting stuck in my head? Maybe not all of them, but a good amount. And you know, not to just say that because something is catchy that means that it's good, but it was something that made me kind of go back and want to reconsider my thoughts and decisions regarding how I kind of ranked or rated this album. And that's the thing, this isn't the first time I've changed my mind on an album. For example, I really like Young New England by Transit. I know I'm kind of a minority on actually liking that album, but I really opened up to it after listening to it like 14,000 times in the minivan that I was driving at the time, because I only had a CD player and that was like the only CD I had. And then I really opened up to it and I was like, I really like it. Kind of the same thing with Turnover's newest album. Newest, I mean, it's not that new anymore, but it's called Good Nature. I really didn't like that one at first, but I changed my mind. I warmed up to it. You know, I really gave it a chance, and that's what I did with this self-titled one. You know, maybe it's taken like 4 years, but you know, here we are. So if I had to rate this album today, I'd say it sits somewhere between a 7 and an 8, much closer to an 8 than a 7, and that has differed a lot because back in the day I probably would have said anywhere between 5 and a 6, being closer to 5. So safe to say I have changed my mind on this album. Do you like this album? Do you hate it? let me know. My mates, thank you so much if you made it this far. Thank you so freaking much for 9K, dude. That freaking blows my mind. I'm so appreciative, man. And I just want to say really quick before I sign off, we have a Mates Club drop happening this Friday. So if that's something that you're interested in at all, I'll throw some pictures up on the screen. You can follow the Instagram if you want to stay really updated. But other than that, thank you so much, my mates. Let me know if you liked the video. Have a great one, and I'll see everyone on Sunday.